Will Labour scrap the police commissioners?
We've asked Lord Stevens to look at exactly this issue. He's setting out for us a long-term vision of policing. It's looking at issues around accountability, which obviously covers police and crime commissioners, but it's also looking at how you raise policing standards, how you have stronger checks and balances when things go wrong, and how you make sure that policing can cope with the sort of challenges of the 21st century. He's due to report before Christmas, so we're going to await his report and then we'll consider what his conclusions are.
And he could advise you that it's possible to scrap the PCC or keep the PCCs, and you'll follow that advice either way.
Well, what we'll do is we'll consider his conclusions. We'll obviously have to have a debate in the Labour Party about his conclusions. What we've said previously about police and crime commissioners is, look, we opposed the principle of them to start off with because we felt it was concentrating too much policing power in a single person's hands and that more checks and balances were needed. So we're very clear that reforms will be needed, but we're going to await John Stevens' advice and the commission, the expert commission he's gathered, which involves people from all over the globe, in fact, because we believe in the public services that we think you've got to have a reform plan for the future, especially at a time when there's less resources around. OK. Now,
when the coalition started cutting the police service, and I mean, you were planning to cut it as well, but they've cut it by more, you said that the policing in Britain faced a perfect storm. But actually, we're halfway through the coalition government. Crime has continued to fall. It's at its lowest level for many, many years, lower than under Labour. So actually, the cuts haven't really had an effect, have they?
Well, that's not what victims think. In fact, we've got 30,000 fewer crimes being solved since the election. We've also got far fewer cases being referred to prosecution for domestic violence or for rape. In fact, actually, they've dropped by a third the number of rape cases being referred to the prosecution, even though, in fact, the number of rape cases reported to the police has been going up. So I think you can see very clear evidence of victims being let down, being failed, more criminals and abusers getting away with it as a result of there being fewer police officers and police officers being stretched in terms of doing the job.
But the crime survey of England and Wales shows that despite the cuts, offending is at its lowest level since the survey began in 1981. So despite the cuts, offending is at a lower level than at any time since 81, including any time during the 13 years when you were in power.
Well, there's been a 20-year drop in crime, and we welcome that. In fact, we want it to go further. And you've seen reductions in things like homicide and burglary over very many years that I think we should all welcome.
And they've continued despite the cuts.
Police are saying, exactly. And the interesting thing that the police are saying is that crime is changing. And what you're also seeing, alongside reductions in some kinds of crime, for example, like car theft, is an increase in online crime, an increase in economic crime, things like credit card and identity fraud, a whole series of online crimes, because that's where we live our lives now. And of course, organised crime knows that too. That's where they're heading. And as you'll know, if you've ever had your credit cards scammed or your number used by somebody else, you know, the bank sorts it out, but they don't report it to the police. And very often victims don't report it to the police either. So a lot of that is going unreported. And what the police are saying is that it's growing exponentially. And that's why we think much stronger action is needed for that. Because otherwise, we're all, as consumers, going to pay a lot more.